Are we ready to go? Hello? She said yes. Okay. Good morning, everyone. The subcommittee will now come to order. Welcome to the fiscal year 2021 Commerce, Justice, Science Subcommittee Markup. I am joined by my good friend, Ranking Member Idaho, who is here today. I also want to welcome the full committee chairwoman, Mrs. Lowy, Ranking Member Granger, and all of the subcommittee members who are participating either in person or by secure video teleconference. Before I move to my opening statement, I'd like to offer a brief explanation of how this markup will work today. Today's room has been configured to maintain the recommended 6-foot social distancing between members, staff, and the press corps. As I mentioned, some members, including myself, have opted to use secure video teleconferencing, which allows them to participate remotely. For those on video conference, once you start speaking, there will be a slight delay before you are displayed on the main service. Speaking into the microphone activates the camera displaying the speaker on the main screen. Do not stop your remark if you do not immediately see the screen switch. If the screen does not change after several seconds, please make sure you are not muted. To minimize background noise and ensure the correct speaker is being displayed, we ask that the members who are participating by video remain on mute unless you have source recognition. For members using the video option, you will notice a clock on the bottom of your screen that will show how much time is remaining. At 1 minute remaining, the clock will turn to yellow. At 30 seconds remaining, I will gently tap the gavel to remind members that their time is almost expired. When your time has expired, the clock will turn red, and I will move to recognize the other members. In terms of the speaking order, we will follow our traditional order, beginning with the chair and ranking member of the subcommittee, then the chair and ranking member of the full committee, and then any other members who wish to speak. Finally, we have set up an email address to which members can send anything they wish to submit in writing at any of our hearings or markups, including documents to be inserted in the record by unanimous consent, amendments, motions, other unanimous consent requests, and so on. That email address has been provided to your staff. I would remind all members that they must verbally request unanimous consent out loud, separately from sending the document or written UC request to the email address. Thank you for your patience and understanding as we navigate this new technology platform. Now let me move on to my opening statement. The fiscal year 2021 Commerce, Justice, Science Appropriations Bill includes a total of $71.473 billion in discretionary budget authority, which is $1.7 billion less below last year's level. This reflects a natural decline due to decreased needs associated with the 2020 census. That said, at this funding level, the bill sustains strong increases to invest in promoting economic development and reducing gun violence, addressing climate change, sustaining scientific leadership, and implementing police accountability and police reform. Let me go into a little more detail on some of these. Our nation is at a moment of reckoning with its history and its present concerning racial discrimination, civil rights, and police violence and accountability. This moment is long overdue in places like the community I represent in the South Bronx and elsewhere. The federal government, and in particular this subcommittee, has an important role to play in addressing these problems, and it is my intent that this bill is a driving force for change. Toward that end, this bill includes major reform efforts to enhance law enforcement accountability and to better protect our civil rights. The bill includes increased funding for the Civil Rights Division, the U.S. attorneys, and the FBI to conduct pattern and practice investigations of law enforcement agencies. We include language to roll back Justice Department policies that have hindered these types of accountability measures. The bill provides funding for a national task force on law enforcement oversight and a national police misconduct database. In addition, the bill includes more than $500 million for new grant programs proposed in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act to drive law enforcement reform and accountability practices. And we accelerate the momentum for reform by requiring recipients of federal law enforcement grants to first put strong reform efforts into effect at the state and local levels, and by requiring those entities who do receive burn jag money to set aside 25% of those dollars for training and accountability efforts. In other words, this subcommittee will not tolerate police violence and the abuse of civil issues using federal dollars. The bill does these things without neglecting important priorities elsewhere. We reject the president's proposed cuts to climate change research programs at NASA and NOAA, and instead invest in those areas. We promote the economic development by supporting significant investments, by supporting those investments at the Economic Development Administration, the Minority Business Development Agency, and through the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program. We invest in reducing gun violence by increasing ATF's budget by $150 million, by sustaining funding for NICS programs and grants, and by increasing funding for the Stop School Violence Act. And we promote criminal justice reform, with large increases for both the First Step Act and Second Chance Act. The bill also ensures that our nation's scientific leadership can continue by increasing funding by $270 million for the National Science Foundation, by $35 million for core NIST activities, and by $101.9 million at NOAA. The bill includes significant funding for the educational components of NASA, NSF, and NOAA to ensure we're training the next generation of scientists to continue this work. Before I close here, I do want to recognize the subcommittee staff and my personal staff for their work on this bill. It's been an enormous effort this year under extremely difficult circumstances. On the majority staff, let me thank our clerk, Bob Bonner, as well as Jeff Ashford, B.G. Wright, Faye Cobb, Shannon McCauley, T.J. Loudermilk, and Tricia Castañeda. And on the minority side, I want to thank Stephanie Gatboys, Kristen Richmond, and Darren Benjamin. I also want to thank my personal staff, Marcus Garza, Angel Migaglioni, and Matt Alpert, for the work of them. They're all truly remarkable. Let me just make a personal note to congratulate Tricia Castañeda, who I understand became an American citizen just a few days ago. So congratulations to you. It's a great week for you. And yes, Ms. Meng, you can applaud, Ms. Lawrence. We're very proud of that, and I know you'll celebrate him, and this is great. Before I close here, I do want to recognize the subcommittee staff and my personal staff for their work, and as I've done already. Let me also take a moment to recognize and thank the ranking member, Mr. Adaho, for his contributions and partnership on this bill. I know he doesn't always agree with everything we have done, but I think we have always been able to have an open and honest dialogue. Lastly, I want to recognize several members who, like myself, will be retiring at the end of this Congress. Mr. Graves and Ms. Roby, I want to thank you for your contributions to this bill and this subcommittee. We have been lucky to have you here and count on your experience and wisdom. And I want to just take a personal note on that both of you have been so friendly and so easy to deal with I really appreciate that. Every chairman appreciates that, and I thank you for that. I want to thank you for all your contributions, and we have been lucky to have you on the committee. I also want to reserve a special thank you for my compatriot and dear friend from New York, Chairwoman Lowy. We have served together in this body and on this committee for a long time. And in fact, many years ago, we were appointed to the Appropriations Committee on the very same day. It's been a true privilege to serve with someone so dedicated to her community on this institution. On a personal note, barring something unusual, this is the last markup I'll be chairing as a cardinal of the Appropriations Committee. I just want to say that it has been an honor to serve with all of you these past 2 years on this subcommittee, and for many of you for years before that. This is a special place, and despite our strong differences sometimes, we're all striving to make this country live up to its ideals. You know, I served 16 years in the New York State Assembly, and now 30 in Congress at the end of this year, 46 years. I've been very fortunate to receive the community support for these 46 years. I still love my work, but health issues make me stop now. 46 years is a long time in public service, so it's time to come home and spend it with the grandchildren and the family and the constituents. And so I thank you for that support, and I thank my community for that. And now I would like to yield to the ranking member, Mr. Adderholt, for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Serrano, and we appreciate your diligence on this bill. Thank you for bringing forth today's FY 2021 Commerce, Justice, Science, and Related Agencies Appropriations Act. I want to thank you and also your staff for all that you've done to address the priorities and the concerns of members on our side of the aisle. I also want to say thank you to the full committee chair, Ms. Lowy, and as was mentioned, we wish you the best as you move on to the next chapter of your life. And we know we'll be seeing each other a lot over the next couple of weeks, but we do just because we're here today in this subcommittee, I do want to point that out. Also, I want to recognize Ranking Member Granger. Thank you for your work with this help on this bill. You've been very helpful with a lot of our projects that we've worked on, and so thank you for your diligence and paying really close attention to this bill. It's been a pleasure to work aside Chairman Serrano, who has chaired this subcommittee and has been involved on this subcommittee and this Appropriations Committee for many, many years. And we also wish you the best as you embark on the next chapter of your life. And you certainly have a long and proud career to be proud of, and we look forward to continuing our friendship. We will miss your cooperative spirit. No doubt we'll miss your tremendous sense of humor and your dedication to the vital work that makes this committee so special. And of course, anytime you put a bill like this together, you have a lot of people working. From the personal staff to the professional staff on the committee, and the majority staff, their work, and I want to particularly thank the minority staff on our committee, Stephanie, Kristen, and Bob, for all of their hard work and trying to make sure that we can move forward with this bill. There's a lot in this bill that we can agree on. For example, I want to point out a few things that I am especially proud of. By providing no less than $400 million for the Block 1B version of the Space Launch System. The bill conveys the important message that Congress intends for NASA to redouble its efforts and to produce the Block 1B. With its powerful exploration upper stage and the 8.4-meter payload fairing, the Block 1B represents a transformational strategic capacity for the United States in deep space exploration. In light of the administration's ambitious plan to return humans to the moon by 2024, Congress has a particular interest in the Block 1B's ability to co-manifest payloads and reduce risk. In this, and of course all of NASA's accounts, NASA shall adhere strictly to congressional direction and accelerate production of critical capabilities. NASA must increase the pace of SLS production to ensure an SLS is available for the Europa missions and other future science missions, in addition to meeting all the human exploration needs. I also want to thank Chairman Serrano for agreeing to include $110 million for nuclear thermal propulsion. It's a level necessary to work toward the design of a flight demonstration by 2024. In addition to some key priorities, the bill also addresses issues impacting all of our communities. It increases funding for critical drug court programs and other vital initiatives that address the opioid epidemic, as well as DNA analysis programs that are helping to eliminate sexual assault kit backlogs and to solve the cold cases that have too long been on the shelves. The bill also rightly directs the Justice Department to undertake novel approaches to addressing online child exploitation, human trafficking, and obscenity. In addition, the bill includes strong funding for the agencies that ensure compliance with our trade laws and their agreements. And I'm especially pleased that it funds the Trump administration's new aluminum import monitoring program. This bill also supports the administration's Industries of the Future initiative, and with its new investments in quantum information science, artificial intelligence, 5G research, and advanced manufacturing. And last but not least, I want to thank Chairman Serrano for including $10 million for Vortex Southeast program. The number of killer tornadoes in the southeastern United States is actually disproportionate to the overall number of tornadoes throughout the country. So this will go a long way and toward the goal of trying to identify those tornadoes. Vortex Southeast is doing a critical work to better understand environmental factors, to improve weather forecast communications in my home region of the South, and in particular in around Alabama. Unfortunately, strong funding in some areas make deficiency in this bill even more glaring. The flat NASA allocation reveals a determination to rebuke America's Moon to Mars Artemis initiative. And yet, we all saw for ourselves just a few weeks ago when the nation witnessed the first U.S.-based launch astronauts in 10 years, the passion in the American people that they have for a new era for space exploration and recognition of strategic value of U.S. space supremacy. President Trump rightly wants more funding to re-energize America's leadership in space, so much so that he's willing to pay for it within an overall austere budget request, and we should follow that lead. Instead, the bill flatly rejects the investment in the capabilities that are needed to land the first woman on the moon. However, worse still, the bill responds to radical demands to defund the police. None of the federal law enforcement agencies in this bill, including FBI, ATF, DEA, U.S. Marshal Service, are fully funded. The U.S. Attorney General has made fighting gun crime one of his top priorities, and yet not one of his initiatives received a requested increase. Even bipartisan requests to address violent gun crime, along with requests to increase resources for the investigation and prosecution of human trafficking, child exploitation, and high-tech organized crime, have all been marginalized in this bill. Furthermore, the bill includes so many new unauthorized conditions that are placed on the Burn, JAG, and COPS programs, it seems likely that these grants will be halted, perhaps indefinitely. I have no doubt that this side of the aisle could have supported bipartisan police training reforms and other timely initiatives regarding police reform policy if the majority had not bowed to the pressure to defund the police. The bill also contravenes existing laws by funding lawyers for the undocumented aliens arriving at our southern border. Current immigration law affirms that undocumented aliens' right to counsel, that they do have that right, but it's only at no expense to the taxpayer. A grant program that provides for direct legal representation of migrants at U.S. taxpayers' expense will only serve as additional inducement for people considering to make the dangerous and the often deadly journey north. It also eliminates several longstanding Second Amendment protections that have enjoyed historical bipartisan support. The elimination of freedoms that are not even associated with criminal misuse of firearms is an unfortunate outgrowth of a gun control agenda with no basis in the science of criminal justice. However, as this process moves forward, I look forward to the opportunity to improve this bill, to work together on both sides of the aisle as we go to full committee markup. We have a lot to discuss, but I know we'll undertake a lot of those discussions in a mutually respectful manner, as we've always done. That's always been the hallmark of this subcommittee under Chairman Serrano's leadership. So thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for your work, and with that, I yield back. Let me also add, there's two other members of our committee that Chairman Serrano mentioned that I also do want to mention, Ms. Roby and Mr. Graves. I want to also point out your hard work on this committee, and y'all have been a champion for so many issues. Ms. Roby, of course, with NASA and Justice Department efforts to assist child and victims of crime. And of course, Mr. Graves has been very helpful in working on wire fraud and threats that are a threat to our cybersecurity and intellectual property. So we wish you all both the best as you move on. But again, we'll be also seeing you a lot over the next couple of weeks. So we look forward to seeing you and look forward to working with you for the rest of the year. So with that, I yield back.
Thank you for your kind comments. Now I'd like to recognize the full committee chairwoman, Nita Lowey, for her remarks.
Well, I thank you, Chairman Serrano and Ranking Member Aderholt, for your work, for their work on this bill, as well as the staff for reviewing the many member requests and helping to craft the product before us. I know my dear friend, Mr. Serrano, is looking forward to retiring, and I wish you the very, very best. You've been a good friend, an extraordinary leader, but I know we'll keep in touch. At a time when we must restore Americans' faith in law enforcement, the Commerce, Justice, Science Bill provides strong funding increases to promote civil rights and improve police practices throughout the country, including more than $500 million in federal grants for states and localities to carry out police reform initiatives. Beyond this urgent responsibility, this subcommittee is tasked with investing in programs that promote economic development, keep our communities safe, reduce gun violence, and advance evidence-based scientific research. This bill would do so by providing an increase of $23 million for the Economic Development Administration to spur the economic growth of hard-hit regions, increase funding for multiple programs at the Department of Justice's Office on Violence Against Women to protect the most vulnerable as our nation faces a troubling new wave of gender and domestic violence as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. An increase of $9.7 million for the National Instant Criminal Background Check grants to help prevent guns from entering the wrong hands, and an increase of $270 million for the National Science Foundation. I congratulate Congressman Serrano on his drafting of this bill. He has been an invaluable leader as chairman of this subcommittee, and he will be greatly missed when he retires at the end of this year. I look forward to moving the bill through the appropriations process, and I'll save all my comments for all the others who are part of our retiring class until the next part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman Lowey. I now yield to the full committee Ranking Member Granger for her remarks.
Chairman Serrano, thank you for presenting the fiscal year 2021 Commerce, Justice, Science Appropriation Bill today. We miss seeing you in person, but glad to see you where you are. Before we begin, I want to recognize you, Mr. Chairman, since sadly this is your last subcommittee markup you'll chair. During your time on the Appropriations Committee, you've been a chair of the Financial Services and this subcommittee, and your willingness to listen to the concerns of members of both parties from all parts of the country, as well as your great personality, will be missed. I also want to thank the ranking member, Mr. Adderholt, for his leadership on our committee and on this bill. He works hard and represents both his district and the state well, and they know that. I also want to thank him for his leadership on the space issues that are so important to our future and what we're doing. From initiatives that strengthen U.S. competitiveness to efforts to combat criminal threats and protect children, this bill supports many important priorities of members on both sides of the aisle. It helps our nation's innovators and manufacturers and invests in cutting-edge research and technology. I commend Chairman Serrano and Chairwoman Lowy for maintaining provisions that protect life. However, there are several items that concern me. For example, long-standing language carried for many years to protect Second Amendment rights is stripped from the bill. This bill makes new investments in science, but only selectively. There's a significant increase for the National Science Foundation, but there's not a penny more for NASA. Specifically, the bill fails to provide adequate funding for an essential component of NASA's Artemis program, the human landing system on which the first woman will travel to the surface of the moon. The inadequate amount included for landers undermines prior year investments in deep space exploration. Flat funding for NASA reveals a deliberate effort to undercut our path toward renewed American space dominance. I believe this is very short-sighted, to say the least. Being the world leader in space will be expensive, but it won't be nearly as costly as letting China dominate space. For far too long, we've allowed China to challenge us with negative implications both for our economy and our national security. The bill also underfunds every one of the Justice Department's federal law enforcement agencies. Not one has its budget requests fulfilled in this bill. In addition, grant funds for our state and local law enforcement partners are conditioned on policies far outside their control. Funds that might otherwise be available for body cameras, bulletproof vests, investigations, or overtime will be withheld indefinitely. Funding is directed to a misconduct registry that will publicly report baseless accusations. This will be welcome news to any criminal looking to sideline a good officer. Unfortunately, this appears to be what defunding the police looks like. This bill demonstrates why bipartisan bicameral agreement on policing reform is needed for us to make real progress. Yet an attempt to make policing reform as bipartisan as possible was already rejected in the House last week. I'm committed to working with my colleagues to address these disagreements as the appropriations process moves forward. In closing, I'd like to recognize the members of the subcommittee and all the staff for their work. On my staff, I'd like to thank Stephanie Gadboys, Darren Benjamin, and Kristen Clarkson. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Ranking Member Granger. I understand there are some members who would like to speak, and the next one in line would be Mr. Cartwright. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Will you recognize Mr. Cartwright?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to take this moment to recognize you, Mr. Chairman, of the years of service, 46 years of public service that you have given in New York and here in Washington, and all of the time you spent on appropriations. As the Cardinal of the Commerce, Justice, and Science Subcommittee, you have displayed the kind of good humor and good will that has moved these bills forward, that enables us to look across the aisle and see adversaries but not enemies. And this is something we could all learn from, and we have done, both from you and Chairwoman of the overall Appropriations Committee, Mrs. Lowy. The both of you have been wonderful standard bearers for comity and goodwill in Congress. All of us have learned from you and have benefited greatly from your time in this leadership. I also want to give my best wishes to Representatives Roby and Graves, who move on. We will miss you. You've been wonderful to work with, and I wanted to say that. I also want to thank those involved in drafting of the fiscal year 2021 CJS Appropriations Bill, including my colleagues, their staffs, and of course the staff of the overall subcommittee. Despite the difficulties posed by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, this subcommittee has worked quickly and diligently to continue its critical work and produce a fiscal year 2021 appropriations bill that I hope we can all strongly support. It's a bill that invests in economic development programs that bring good jobs to communities, including initiatives that help former coal communities like mine in northeastern Pennsylvania. Yes, I heard the rhetoric about defunding police, but that's what it is. When you have an appropriations bill in front of you, you can look beyond the rhetoric. We are not in favor of defunding police. That's not what is happening here. In fact, quite as Mrs. Lowy pointed out, we have $500 million more going to states and municipalities to fund ongoing police reform initiatives. And that's the answer. And that's what Democrats believe in the House, that it takes more money, not less. It takes additional support, not defunding, to solve this problem that we're facing in this country. This bill protects climate research and invests in scientific responses to climate change. It ensures that we protect our planet for future generations. It also works to reduce gun violence, invest in protecting our children from child predators, and increases aid to low-income Americans. It also provides robust funding for NASA, helping ensure continued American leadership in space. So I want to thank the chairman for his service and for his leadership on the fiscal year 2021 CJS Appropriations Bill, and I yield back.
Our next speaker is Mr. Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Serrano, you have been a dear, dear friend. I appreciate your kind words a moment ago. I think everybody on this committee and within the body of the House just really appreciate your spirit, how you've been a guide to all of us. The many personal conversations we've had, professional conversations, and conversations about policy have always been valued by me, and I appreciate your counsel as I was chairman of the Financial Services Committee that you've served on for so many years. So you'll be missed, but it's good to see you. You look great, and we're so glad that you're doing well. But I also want to just take a moment and thank you and your team for working with myself and my office to include some priorities that were important to us and certainly important to, I think, our nation in addressing some of the cyber and telecommunications security threats that we all know and face, especially in the last few months. And I think we've all seen firsthand how important a secure network and a reliable telecommunication system is to our daily lives. So the priorities that you've included, they're going to better position our nation to develop the next generation of communications technology in 5G and beyond. They'll bolster the relationships between American businesses and law enforcement to address the daily cybersecurity threats that those companies face on a very regular basis. And it also turns our attention towards blocking the influences from foreign adversaries who could easily use their networks and technology and their equipment to steal American data. So we're at a cyber crossroads in this nation, and the challenges are tremendous. They're great, And so I deeply appreciate you recognizing this importance of this issue for us as a committee, but also as a country. So with that, I yield back, and thank you again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Graves. Now we recognize Ms. Lawrence. Ms. Lawrence, can you hear me?
Hello, thank you so much. I want to begin by thanking Chairman Serrano and the ranking member of the subcommittee for your efforts in drafting the fiscal year 21 CJS funding bill. I'm thrilled to see that the bill includes many priorities that is important to my district and to the great state of Michigan. In particular, I'm thankful for the subcommittee's prioritization of the Census Bureau, combating hate crimes and human trafficking, ensuring that NASA has the resources it needs to complete its mission to put a man and a woman on the moon, and advancing the U.S. leadership on AI research through NHTSA. Following House passage of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act last month, this funding measure continues our commitment to enacting real police reform in this country. For example, this bill provides increased funding to enforce civil rights laws and address police misconduct, as well as conditions federal funds to promote reform to state and local levels. I want to take this moment to express my gratitude to Chairman Serrano for your tireless work on this subcommittee. Wearing the ultimate title of a cardinal, it's been my honor and privilege working with you these last 2 years. Your leadership and dedication to the people of New York and this country will be sorely missed during your retirement. But I'm excited for you to take that next step in your life. 40 plus years of service, public service, really solidifies your legacy as a person who has made a difference. I look forward to advancing this bill out of the subcommittee and supporting it in full committee on the floor. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Lawrence, for your kind comments. Ms. Meng? Can you hear me, Ms. Meng?
Yes, thank you. I don't need to speak. I just wanted to also add my gratitude to you, Chairman Serrano, for the tremendous work, the opportunities, and the leadership that you've shown in the short time that I have been on the committee. As a New York delegation member, I'm saddened to see you go, but happy for your family that they will have more time with you. And the same goes for our full committee chairwoman, Nita Lowy, as well. And obviously to our colleagues on the subcommittee, Martha Roby and Mr. Graves. Thank you to Ranking Member Adderholt and to all the committee members, and especially to our committee staff for the tremendous work that all of you have put into this bill. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Meng. Ms. Kaptur.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Serrano and members.
Ms. Kaptur, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Chairman Serrano and members. First of all, let me add my words to those of our colleagues and actually bow to you for your dignified service here in the Congress, and I'm certain in the New York legislature as well. And please let me offer that the nation owes you a deep debt of gratitude for your lifetime of public service, of dedicated congressional service, and of course, all of your work on behalf of your district and country. It is just remarkable. The bill you are presenting to this subcommittee comes at a very difficult time in our nation, but as is your custom with your good nature and your very perceptive grasp of the human condition. You're leading us forward despite the obstacles. And Americans from across the country, especially people who feel left out, Black Americans, people of color, immigrants, people who feel sidelined, continue to yearn for equal justice, and you've been their champion. Your bill makes important investments and programs to reimagine the way our country approaches public safety. This bill also provides for the robust economic development platforms necessary for our nation to meet the challenges of the coronavirus and the economic recovery that must follow. America thanks you. I thank you for your honorable, gentlemanly, always humor-filled public service that lifted us all, and for the vast legacy that you have left across the commerce, justice, and science agencies for the American people and their future betterment. You surely are living testimony to performing, as a result of your service in your lifetime, something worthy to be remembered. And I shall always remember you for what you've taught me about Puerto Rico, about New York City, about commerce, justice, state issues. And I understand, as we look down the ranking of congressional districts and the median income of individuals who live in them, you represent not district number 1 in terms of median income. You've represented district number 435, and you have done it with such aplomb, with such dignity. I personally will miss you, and I look forward to visiting New York City and taking you out to lunch, and maybe Chairwoman Lowy can help arrange that someday when it's safer to travel. So I just wish you very well, and thank you so very much for your just extraordinary service. I will personally miss you very, very much, and I yield back.
Thank you very much, Ms. Capter. Are there any other members who wish to speak? Are there any amendments to the bill? Seeing none, I would like to recognize Mr. Cartwright, the Subcommittee Vice Chair, for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the fiscal year 2021 Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations Bill be favorably reported to the full Committee on House Appropriations.
The question is on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. I ask unanimous consent that the staff be permitted to make technical and conforming changes to the bill and report just approved. See no objection, so ordered. A bit of housekeeping. Please make sure you leave your materials at the table. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, this meeting stands adjourned.